the feedback loop being so fast. We build something, get it in the hands of someone who was using it. We would literally see how they were using it and ask them questions. And if they didn't like it, we would know within a minute. And then we fix it. And then we send it back to them. And then we fix it. And those people were literally sitting next to each other. And then after work, they'd go to drinks and they talk to each other about what they built. And so that feedback loop ended up becoming a foundation of how we would build a business.
It's time! Work, play, evolve!
I want to connect the listeners to the best of the best. Welcome to the Evolved Broker Podcast. I am your host, Pat Costello, the co-founder and principal at Evolve MGA. Our mission for the podcast is to bring the insurance industry the best of the best. My guest today is the co-founder and CEO of the fastest growing insurance agency in the US. His name is Spike Lipkin. He grew up in Colorado, attended University of Pennsylvania, and received his graduate degree from Stanford Business School. After working as an investor at Blackstone, he helped grow OpenDoor.com from a 5-person company into a $3 billion business as their head of finance. He then went on to found a retail brokerage called Newfront Insurance. To date, they've raised over $300 million and completed a merger with ABD Insurance. Their valuation is over $2 billion. We chat about his story, his work and school experience, and his vision for the future of Newfront. Spike has a really interesting outlook on the future of the industry, and he is an inspiration to young entrepreneurs trying to disrupt long-standing industries. Please download, subscribe, and leave a review on whatever platform you are listening on, and feel free to reach out to me at pat@evolvedbrokerpodcast.com with any comments or suggestions for the podcast. Today's episode is sponsored by First Insurance Funding. First is the leading premium finance company in insurance and is known throughout the industry for their personalized service and quote flexibility. If you're tired of sending quote requests for smaller premiums to multiple companies, not leaving enough time to negotiate larger opportunities, then choose First as your primary financing source and experience the First difference today. Without further ado, here's Spike. Spike, welcome to the Evolved Broker Podcast.
Thanks for having me, Patrick. It's a long time in the making. I think 5 years ago, we met in person for coffee. So
I know. I totally remember that. I believe you were looking for producers in the insurance world. We got coffee somewhere in Soma.
Soma.
Yeah. Was your guys' office based around there at the time? Or were you living in the city at the time?
So our initial office was an apartment that we told everyone was an office.
Okay.
It had a bathroom with a bathtub in it. Probably the giveaway. One day, my co-founder Gordon came and did laundry at our office. Also a giveaway. So that was our initial office, and we've subsequently grown and today have real office space. A lot of which is empty, but yeah, at the time that was in mid-market, so it was close by. I think we grabbed coffee.
Man, washer dryer in the office, it does present some convenience though.
One of the many perks. Yeah.
Yeah.
Laundry.
Great employee perk. Well, Spike, it's great to see you again. I am very excited to catch up with you. I'm hoping that we can give the audience a feel for who you are as a person, your background, where you grew up, some of the experiences that you had from school and from early work experience, because I know you had some really interesting stuff that you went through. And then the last segment, I'd really love to go through Newfront Insurance, some of the recent updates, some really exciting updates, and really where you see the future of Newfront and the future of the insurance industry, if that's okay with you.
Sounds great.
Cool. So this is a couple things I don't know. I know we go back a few years, but where did you grow up? And can you tell me a little bit about like your family and just general background?
Yeah, grew up in Colorado. My mom is an artist. My dad's an architect who had a very entrepreneurial career. So I sort of had the entrepreneurial bug from an early age. And I also saw how entrepreneurship can create huge opportunity, can have impact on communities. So grew up in Colorado in a mountain town, went east for college, lived on the East Coast for a number of years. And then
that was, sorry to pause you there. That was University of Pennsylvania, right?
Penn undergrad.
Okay.
And then came out here. My wife's from the Bay Area, so we settled out here and love it out here. And I live in the Mission in San Francisco now.
Oh, nice. Very cool.
For the last people.
And at one point you went to Stanford Graduate School of Business. Was that, I know like after University of Pennsylvania, you were working for Blackstone at one point. Were you going to Stanford Business School while you were working, or did you take a break, or maybe you went to Stanford Business School immediately after University of Pennsylvania? How did that work out?
I worked for a couple of years at Blackstone, which is actually where I first got exposure to insurance and risk management and benefits. And then I went full-time to business school for 2 years. And I remember someone telling me that at the time, I wanted to start a company, and I had these ideas about the insurance industry. And I remember a founder I was friends with said that going to business school in your 20s is like saying you want to join the NBA and taking 2 years off from practicing. So it was a fun 2 years, not ultra connected to building Newfront, but learned a great deal, made a lot of great relationships that still have to this.
I want to pause on that point just because I find Stanford Business School so interesting. I was listening to a podcast called All In, which is a lot of Silicon Valley legends, and they just had the All In Summit, and they had a speaker that was coming through, and they're talking about the characteristics of entrepreneurs and who starts businesses. And there was a crazy stat about Stanford Business School, and it was like some enormously high percentage of successful startups are founded by Stanford Business School graduates. What made you want to go to Stanford Business School is question number one. And question number two is, how did you get in? Because I know it's very competitive.
Yeah. So, I had grown up interested in technology, reading about technology, and, so you read about Silicon Valley, and here I was in Colorado at the time, reading about Silicon Valley, reading about these companies, these entire industries getting built. And it felt like Stanford was sort of at the center of that. So found out about it through that. I think part of the reason you see a number of successful businesses get started out of Stanford is you're in the right place at the right time, and you have time. The resources there are incredible, right? You can call on experts in any field if you have something you want to explore or learn more about. And then, I think being in Silicon Valley at any point in the last, few decades has been the right place at the right time. So I think that's led to a lot of great companies getting started. In my year, a number of my friends started businesses that have gone on to be really successful. So there's also this really cool entrepreneurial community. It turns out, in my experience, that many of the founders across industries are just facing the exact same problems and exact same challenges, right? It's all about finding the best people, motivating those people. Totally. And it almost doesn't matter what the business is, everyone's facing the exact same challenges. So it's really helpful to have a network of folks who were thinking about the same things and solving the same problems.
Were you shocked when you got in? Because I know it's so hard to get in.
Okay. Completely shocked.
Yeah.
There were 300. I think there were 350 people my year, and I was certain that I was like the 350th person that they let in. It felt like a total coin toss.
Yeah.
I knew people way more qualified than myself who didn't get in. So certainly a stroke of luck.
Nice. And what would you credit that to? Would you think it was grades? You think it was, previous work experience, or was there something else that you think was like, oh, okay, I think this is why they let me in?
I think, and this is informed, I think, how we've thought about building Newfront. I think it has a lot to do with references. So much of the way I think about hiring people is interviews are valuable, but what's really valuable is being able to talk with someone who this person's worked with in the past and hear about what it's like working with them. What I can discover in an hour is a fraction of what someone who's worked with this candidate for years and years has discovered. So I think, references go a long way. My sense is, I was fortunate to work with great people prior to going to Stanford that were kind enough to write me references. But I think it's a total black box who gets into these programs. And I'm sure, 99 years out of 100, I wouldn't have gotten in, but I just got lucky on that year.
Yeah, that's amazing. We just had a recruiting specialist, Carrie Johnson, on, who focused heavily on emphasizing how important those referrals are. So
Yeah.
I'm glad that you reiterated it, and it's something that I think is crucial to our own recruiting efforts with Evolve. So that's really big. While you were at Stanford, did you take the touchy-feely course with Carol Robin and David Bradford?
I did. And I know David's been a guest on your show, and
Yes.
He's someone I really admire. I think I've read his book, and I found the course to be incredibly valuable, extremely eye-opening, something that I hope many people have the chance to go through. I know there are now versions of it that exist outside of Stanford, but I think as a leader, understanding how you are impacting others, how you're perceived by others, it's just so insanely valuable. You're sort of getting to peek behind the curtain of what people are thinking, and change in ways you want to change, not change in ways you don't want to change. But it was probably the most valuable course I took at Stanford.
That's really interesting to hear. And that's actually one of like the rapid fire questions we have is, what was your favorite course at Sanford? So we already checked that off the list. And yeah, I couldn't agree with you more. We're in an industry that's built on relationships as well.
Yes.
So really, really applicable to the insurance world. I won't give away too many secrets because we did record a whole episode with Carol and David about their book Connect, which is all about building better relationships.
Yeah, it turns out that every business is just human beings, and being able to interact with people, being able to have a feedback-rich relationship with other people is huge. And I know our industry is defined by relationships and human connection, but I would argue that every business, even the most technical businesses in the world, are just people working together.
Yep.
And so that's incredibly valuable. Huge fan of Carol Robin, huge fan of David as well.
Yeah, I'm with you. I recently got dinner with David in Berkeley, and such an interesting guy. So very, very cool people, and very cool that you actually took that course. That's amazing. I'm very jealous. You mentioned you worked at Blackstone and you got some exposure to the insurance world. You also had experience with a company called opendoor.com. And from what I know, you were like one of the first 5 employees there, and you grew that company to the point where now I think it's worth over $3 billion. Can you talk about your experience with Open Door?
Yeah, so I joined from Blackstone, and Open Door had this idea of making it easier for people to sell and buy their homes. And at the time, it was a small team. They had this crazy idea that you could algorithmically price homes. So joined, we had an office above this bar in San Francisco called Kate O'Brien's. And I think it was one of the years where the Giants won the World Series. And so at 4:30 every day, it was basically impossible to get work done because it was so loud. But I learned an incredible amount there. What I saw was a team that was really focused on recruiting. So, early on from the first day, Eric, the CEO there, was focused on finding and retaining the absolute best people. And one of the things I took away was he was looking years ahead and saying, we're going to be a business with thousands of employees at some point. Who are the leaders we need in place? And he would play this long game of recruiting people over really, really long periods of time. So amazing learning there. Getting to see that business scale was incredible. I was there for a couple of years and then left to start Newfront. But it's obviously been extremely successful and gone on to be a public company today.
Okay, can you talk about that transition period? Like, what drew you to founding Newfront from Open Door?
So I had been in 2 different roles, first at Blackstone and then at Open Door, where I was exposed to insurance. And frankly, it just blew my mind. The experience is terrible. As a client, you fill out these mountains of paperwork. And by the way, you fill them out every year, which is wild, right? Even, the most hated companies in America, like the cable companies, they don't ask you to renew your, internet subscription every year. They just auto renew you. But somehow in our industry, we are giving our clients the chance every year to fire us. Hey, fill out this blank application. What's the name of your business?
Yeah.
The name hasn't changed.
So true.
So that's mind blowing to me. And then, you wait weeks, months, you get back this incredibly confusing proposal. Where the prices differ, but so does every term and condition and endorsement. And so that process of purchasing insurance is terrifying because you don't know what you're getting. There's no upside to doing it right, and there's a lot of downside to doing it wrong. And then, you buy this policy, you get billed 5 different invoices, some of it's direct bill, some of it's agency bill. You then, ongoing management of the policy is confusing. I remember I had our broker's cell phone and I would call him all the time. He was a broker in Phoenix at the time. And then finally a claim. It's like this black box. You bought this piece of paper, it's 600 pages long. You hope it's going to cover your claim. So long way of saying, I got kind of obsessed. Yeah. And I started thinking about how this is a product that affects every business. You wouldn't have innovation without insurance. You wouldn't have people trying new things, advancing society without it, yet it's totally antiquated. Mm-hmm. But when you look at the rest of businesses, they're moving online, right? Payroll systems are online, accounting systems are online, the HRIS system is now online. So all the data, this rich data set that's used to underwrite insurance has moved from file cabinets to the cloud. And our thesis was, well, as that data moves online, the entire process of buying and managing insurance and benefits is going to change. We then got to see the inside of some brokerage firms. And what we saw were these really meaningful client interactions where the clients were really depending on an advisor, a trusted human, to help them through their transaction, help them through their claims management. And then behind the scenes, it was chaos. These insurance professionals were being let down by the tools that were available to them. We learned about, these legacy agency management system providers, and learned that most brokerages and insurance professionals weren't feeling well served by those tools. So we just got really excited. We saw this opportunity for a better client experience, a better experience for professionals. We learned that a bunch of carriers were really struggling as well. I think everyone's heard about how underwriters receive, really messy submissions and can't get through all their submissions. So we saw this problem that fundamentally we thought was a data problem that could lead to a better client experience. So that led us ultimately to get started. I got to know Gordon, our chief technology officer. He was first in his class at MIT. He had built and sold a company to LinkedIn and was interested in insurance. And the overlapping circles of world-class engineers and the insurance industry and folks who want to do something in insurance are like, 2 circles that are barely touching, right? There are not many people that meet that profile. So Gordon started getting excited.
And how did you meet Gordon?
We met through some mutual friends.
Okay.
We had a bunch of friends in common. And we just started spending time together, and we started shadowing clients who were buying insurance. And then we started shadowing brokers as well, and starting to understand what they did. And, it got us really excited because, like I said, we saw that a really important thing happening and a lot of work that we thought computers could do really well. And so ultimately we took the plunge. I think you have to be somewhat naive to start a business. And so there's something non-rational there. We took the plunge. We got started. We initially called the company Abe, and we had the website Hi Abe.
Yes, I totally remember that.
Yeah, truly the worst branding. And I have myself to thank for that. We thought, Honest Abe, like the honest broker, and then we couldn't get abe.com because it's owned by Amazon. So we got hiabe.com, but everyone thought it was Hiabe. For any listeners that want to buy the domain Hiabe, we still have that available. Still on.
That's super funny. I remember going to that website.
Yes. I wish you didn't remember that because that was embarrassing. But now we have a much better name.
Okay. Newfront's a great name.
Thank you. We're excited about it. We did this long branding exercise and met this branding expert, who wore a black turtleneck and, told us to imagine how the brand made us feel. Couldn't figure anything out. And then my wife was actually the one who came up with the name Newfront. We had spent days and days, and she just said, well, why don't you call it Newfront? And it turns out that was available. And so we went with it.
Wow. How did she come up with it?
We were thinking about new and front, and, it wasn't crazy to combine all these things. Yeah. We had these long lists, but she was the one that did it. Yeah.
That's a great story. That's really cool. I'm glad that she gets the credit.
She totally gets the credit for that and many other things.
Okay, cool. So you see the problem, and you have a potential solution for the problem, and you have really like what sounds like the founding team. Was the next step like, we're going to come up with a different differentiator for the retail agency model and then pitch it to venture capital firms?
So the first thing we did was spend time with a lot of insurance professionals. So producers, account managers, account executives, folks on the claim side, and then clients. And we started triangulating on this problem, which was there's some of the transaction and some of the management of insurance, which is really strategic, really high level. It really ties into a business's goals about how they want to take risk. And then there's some part of it, which is paperwork and admin and data entry and more data entry and more paperwork. And what we saw was this opportunity to combine what was really working in our industry with a better technology platform. So we had this idea, and then we started looking at how to build it. And you look at our industry, it's really complicated. And so, Gordon started building the initial version. We realized pretty quickly that we needed a lot bigger team to be able to build the product that we wanted to build. So we were fortunate to raise some money. We raised, I think, $3 million in our first funding round. And then our first 10 hires were equal parts insurance professionals and engineers. And we had, this apartment that we worked out of on Roush Street. And actually Roush Street is where Airbnb was founded. So we liked that a lot.
Cool. So that's Roush Street. Is that in the Mission?
Roush is, it's mid-market. It's 8th and Mission.
Okay.
Roughly. One of those mid.
How do you spell it?
Rausch.
Okay.
Roush.
Okay, cool. I like that story.
And we just spent time brainstorming together. And then we were really fortunate to bring on Forrest Whitmire. He was our founding producer, and he had been in the industry for a while, understood the tech side of things as well. And he started bringing over clients. And we were then able to go interview those clients and start building. And so it was super collaborative. I mean, literally everyone was sitting in the same room because we didn't have any offices. We just had one big living room. And everyone's desks were together, and you'd have, an engineer sitting next to an account manager, and they would just talk about the pain points. And so, it started with something really rudimentary and then kind of developed over time. And what we didn't realize that I think was a huge competitive advantage is, when you look at the innovation efforts in our industry, historically, they've been really large, successful brokerage firms where they have, a very successful business, ways of doing things, established practices, and they try to bring in engineering talent. And it's really hard because it's already working. The system's really big already. And so that hasn't historically worked that well. And then on the other end of the spectrum, you have technology companies that have tried to build a product, but it hasn't been informed by insurance professionals. And so the result has been those products don't always land, and they don't always work out. And so we didn't realize it at the time, but by building and literally being in the same room, I mean, this was obviously pre-COVID, we were building this competitive advantage of the feedback loop being so fast. We build something, get it in the hands of someone who was using it. We would literally see how they were using it and ask them questions. And if they didn't like it, we would know within a minute. And then we'd fix it. And then we'd send it back to them. And then we fix it. And those people were literally sitting next to each other. And then after work, they'd go to drinks and they talk to each other about what they built. And so that feedback loop ended up becoming a foundation of how we would build a business. And to this day, anything we build is informed by clients and insurance professionals. That's our true north.
That's awesome. I remember back in the day, pre-COVID, I forget what year it was, but you guys had office space downtown. And I think this probably was after the apartment. This was like very high quality, legitimate office space in downtown San Francisco. And you guys had a party in the lobby at one point. At what point did you guys move to that office downtown?
That was maybe a year later.
Okay.
We found that we had team members that were taking calls in the stairwell. And there was a family of 4 that lived next door to us, and they hated us.
Oh, man, I'm sure.
We were bringing bicycles, and people were making calls in the hallway. And so at that point, we realized we needed to get a real office, and the business was picking up. And that event was really cool, and I want to do another one of those. It was a carrier appreciation event. So what we realized is in our business, without having the right trading partners and making them successful, we can't be successful. And, we were used to hearing about stories of brokers asking for things from their trading partners. And so we hosted an event, there was live music, there was an open bar, and we invited all of our carrier partners. We also incidentally needed appointments. And so it was helpful to be able to tell the story and the vision. And so, that was a fun event.
It was epic. I had a really good time, and it was very unique. Most retailers that Evolve works with have not thrown like a carrier appreciation event. So it was very refreshing. And it was also cool to see, seeing premium finance people I work with, seeing different producers that we work with at Newfront, seeing, even like friendly competition, whoever it is, or even it's like the insurance industry is so incestuous. It's like seeing people that work for, have jumped to companies a few times. It's such a small world,
It's a very small world. And we need to do that again now that the world is coming back. And I think people have this desire to congregate and see each other again.
Oh, yeah. That's what I was going to say. I would love to attend one of those again. It was like, that was like downtown San Francisco, like pre-COVID. That's exactly what I think of with the downtown atmosphere of, just getting together in large groups for drinks and stuff. And that's the stuff that I miss. So if you guys are able to do that again, I would love to attend.
Awesome. Let me look into it.
Yeah. Well, so after that moment though, you guys experienced some really cool growth and some exciting updates. You guys merged with ABD Insurance. Can you talk about that merger and how it came about?
Yeah, absolutely. So, we were growing rapidly, and there was a firm in the Bay Area that frankly, I had always looked up to, called ABD. And when we were starting out, I got to know Kurt first and then Brian, the founders of ABD. And the person who introduced me said, if you're doing something in insurance at the intersection of insurance and technology, there are probably no two humans on earth better equipped to talk with than Kurt and Brian. And, my approach has always been to speak with competitors. I think we have more to learn in every one of those settings than lose. And, ABD had been hugely successful at the time. They had some of the top professionals in the industry. They had some of the top clients in the industry. So we started talking. We got to know each other a little bit over a few years. And then something interesting started happening. So on our side, what we were realizing is as we were building,